I've used a bit of it in the show that I just did. I didn't use the etudes because we were too far gone with the table work to really make the etudes work.
It doesn't rely on one mind. Whilst the director's mind might, as I said before, come in with the dramaturgy and shape the approach, the initial approach. I like that it is open and it really harnesses the imagination of everybody that you have brought on board and in the room in a production.
Your job as director throughout this whole thing is to be guiding and sculpting everything that's going on, but keeping a balance between them making the offers and, you know, it's an exploration together, but you're kind of setting up the parameters.
I think it's imperative to consider the fact that the DE process revolves around having a super objective at some stage, but not coming to it straight away.
Like sometimes the person who is doing everything, making all the offers, isn't actually holding the power of the scene. You know what I mean? Like someone can just be like trashing a room and slapping someone, but if it's in, like, they're not necessarily the one who's in control of the scene, even though they're making all the offers. But I think it's more about you just using your judgment really and thinking about what's going to make the most dynamic scene in terms of leadership and who's in control. So once again, in the etude, you just get them to respond to that, basically, and the idea of leadership, because that's what really makes a juicy scene in a lot of ways, like who's driving and who's in the back seat, and those shifts are really fascinating as well.
You know, there's dynamics of a scene, and you figure out what those dynamics are by figuring out who's kind of leading and in control of that scene. So you hone that subtext in a little bit more by saying, you're leading for this part and you're leading for that part.
So once you've found your objective, you go into strategies, which then allow you to play those objectives.
And you're limiting what subtext and exploration you can do by choosing an objective. But you do kind of need to get to a point where you do narrow down.
The objectives etude, I find, is a fantastic opportunity, one, for the director to insist on outcomes, but two, for the actor to feel what it is to utterly 100% immerse themselves in achieving one goal.
As the exploration phase goes on, I think you do get an idea of what the show is and what you want it to be. And as that sort of develops, you can sculpt around that.
And I think that it can make for a much more striking production.
So the reason the improvisations are first is to, again, mine the text, allow everything to develop, and then sit on a super objective. And then the rest of the process with visualization, which is sort of your locking in phase, is to always ensure that, as I said before, it is pushed towards enhancing the super objective rather than just creating memorable moments.
The thing that I think can be most effective is making moments memorable, and how you construct those moments to be memorable.
Objectives, strategies. So they need to be clear, concise, to the point, and have powerful psychological and physical relevance. That's also, they need to be like relevant in terms of to the scene. That's something I learned. Like, you can have this really sick objective that's really powerful, but if it's not relevant to the actual scene, then there's no point. So once again, your job as director throughout this whole thing is to be guiding and sculpting everything that's going on, but keeping a balance between them making the offers and, you know, it's an exploration together, but you're kind of setting up the parameters.
It can be a bit forced if a director just chooses little moments and says, oh, these are the best bits, and kind of forces them to happen. But so it'd be nice to actually figure out in a real rehearsal context, as in over a lot longer period of time, in an entire play, how you make the most memorable moment, if that's your climax or things like that. But I quite like the logic around having to find what those memorable actions or moments are through offers, basically, from your actors, rather than the director just choosing.
It actually is draining for the actor if they do it right. And it gives them a strong sense of what every performance has to be like.